Thanks for tuning in to New York Jets coverage, Jets FM on EOFN. We are nearing the end of August. The Jets have yet to disclose their final cuts. 53-man roster. They have until Tuesday. We're recording this on Sunday night. Some teams have began let it be known who is already cut. There are some deals already being made, including the Jets that we're going to get into. But I think we have a little bit of time before now and the official disclosure of the Jets 53-man roster to make some final predictions. So we figured let's do this show, bring in Jan Levine from RotoWire, my co-host for the season. And Jan, the big news over the last few days as far as the cuts were concerned, and we talked about this last week, that really there was only one player in free agency the Jets could look at if they wanted to add depth up front. And like about 24 hours later, Everson Griffin signed with the Vikings. I think the Vikings thought the Jets maybe had the same idea. So they gobbled him up real fast, which meant that there was nobody really good to pick up in free agency. So we knew if the Jets were going to grab somebody important, it was going to have to be through a trade, and they went ahead and made one.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a little chuckle when Griffin got signed. I was like, as a similar, I thought that somebody had listened to the YouTube recording we had made and think that they need to jump on it. But with Carl Lawson out, the Jets, I guess, figured they needed to get another Lawson for the active roster and traded a 6th-round pick to Houston for Shaq Lawson. Clearly, there's a differentiation between the two of them in terms of ilk and talent and production, but low cost. Some dead cap space that the Texans are taking on this year and next year as well. I think it's about $5.3 million next year.
Oh,
but Jets had, decent contract for next year. But we said Jets needed a lineman.
Yeah.
Guy who's got experience, guy who can rush the passer a little bit. Clearly, downgrade from Lawson, from Carl Lawson, sorry, as opposed to Shaq Lawson, but increases at least the talent base and the talent pool a little bit, and now puts somebody who was probably going to make the roster now more so on the bubble than he would have been beforehand, given the addition of Lawson to the lineup.
Yeah, that's really what happened is Shaq Lawson took somebody else's spot and improved our depth. And next year, hey, if it's Shaq and Carl, along with the rest of the defensive line, then that's even going to be a better deal, because the pick that the Jets gave up was the deal that the Jets traded Jordan Willis to San Francisco. And Willis really didn't do a hell of a lot with the Jets. So, and we know how many picks still that Joe Douglas has. He can afford to give up a 6th rounder. So
yeah, well, if somebody said I'll trade you Jonathan Willis for Shaq Lawson, you probably would take it and run and not complain about it, which is in essence what happened.
Yeah. Even though Willis actually played pretty well, which is not a surprise, because Robert Saleh does that when you come to his team. All right, now let's talk about our roster 53 predictions, and these are never going to come true because crazy things always happen behind the scenes with these NFL teams. We never have any idea what they're up to, especially what you can see is they'll depending on, they might actually go down to 51 or 52, and why is there an extra spot open? Well, that's because they're about to pick someone else up. They're going to juggle the practice squad for a week or two because of injuries. We have no idea who's going on injury designations and who's not. They're going to try to manipulate that as much as possible. So we'll try to give you as many scenarios as we can, starting with the quarterback situation. And look, maybe I was completely wrong with Josh Johnson. And the reason I felt that there was why is this guy even going to be a thought about being on the 53-man roster is because he wasn't even playing until game 3. And he looked much better than any other backup that the Jets have, because he's an old veteran, believe it or not. He's not a young kid anymore. He knows the system like the back of his hand. And I just can't imagine the Jets are now going to go into the regular season without him as the number 2. I can't imagine that's going to happen. So I think we're on the same page. We're pretty close, because I think what they're going to try to do is put White in some sort of injury designation so they can kind of, manipulate that. They'll keep Johnson. I think they'll keep Morgan, but I could see them also protecting Morgan on the practice squad. And I think that's kind of where you're at.
Yeah, and I think the only danger with that is if somebody else if you try to put him practice squad designation and somebody else tries to pick him up. The other thing I said also, I thought given history, Nick Mullins might be a guy they look at because of that San Francisco connection, given that Gardner Minshew just went to Philly, right? And they now have an open spot there. I thought maybe Mullins could be a guy to look at in on waivers. But I think Johnson, look, you and I both were not enamored with the Johnson move, but it's hard to argue.
Yeah.
He played well
Sure.
on Friday. He probably may have earned himself a spot. Wilson does need a guy who's a veteran.
Yep.
The only reason I like Mullins is because Mullins does know the system, right? He played in San Francisco for a couple of years. He knows the system. He knows the floor. He knows Salah.
Well, then you might as well just keep Johnson in.
That may have given him an edge, but I do think Johnson, with his performance, earned the number 2 spot.
Yeah.
Obviously, with Wilson as the number 1. And look, Wilson not playing Friday was a pretty good indication that they think very confident as to where he is right now and where he's going to be as the year progresses.
Well, it's amazing because it looked like there were a number of possibilities that there's still a handful of teams and teams that had held out some of their quarterbacks like Sam Darnold and so forth, that we were going to still see like the third preseason game from old. That wasn't the case. This was more like the fourth preseason game. We saw a lot of backups playing. So interesting that that's the way that the Jets decided to go. All right, now running back. And we're a little bit different here, only because of the fact that I still have Wesco's a running back, and that's what he is. He's no longer really a tight end, so I'm putting him in with the running back room. I was very surprised that you actually think LaMichael Pirines on the bubble.
I've read a bunch of things that he hasn't impressed in camp so far. I've read a bunch of things that, remember, he wasn't brought in by this coaching regime, although he was obviously brought in by the GM with Douglas. While Douglas has a connection to him, Salah and LaFleur do not. So, look, 4th round pick, guy we thought he had upside. It all depends on how they want to configure the roster and how they want to squeeze the roster, right? We don't know if Coleman's the number 1. Ty Johnson, who is one of your faves, I know, looked very good again on Friday night. We know Michael Carter is going to be there. And then you put Wesco in with the running back room. I had him listed as a tight end, but I also had him listed like an H-back or a fullback. So basically considering in the same kind of designation. Yeah. It all depends on who that 4th running back is. Is it Josh Adams or is it Pirine? Adams, look, I could see them going Pirine. But again, I'm only saying that I would not be shocked if they didn't go in that direction and went with Adams. Though I do think the favorite is probably Pirine to get that 4th running back role.
I think that, and this is what I also wanted to touch up with the quarterback situation, is that I'm trying to figure out, it's a new coaching staff and it's kind of a new partnership. So I'm trying to figure out when they say one thing and do another, which they all do. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are they trying to do here? And I'm starting to gather that and we kind of touched up on this last week too, that I think that even though Michael Pirine hasn't played in the first half, he hasn't played with the ones or looked like a starter. First of all, I think some of it has to do with his injury situation. He's been banged up a lot this summer. I think, to me, that's one reason. Number 2, I happen to think that this coaching staff is playing a lot more of the guys that need to be examined more earlier in the games. So I think Pirine is, I thought he was 100% secure, so I'll say 95% that you're doubting it. I think the only question is the injury kind of deal. But other than that, Johnson has been real good. I can't imagine Adams is going to make the team because now that you have so many, like if you put 4 tight ends and Wesco and you have 4 running backs, there's just not enough space for Josh Adams. I just would be surprised if he made the team.
No, like I said, I think Pirine could, but like I said, I'm giving a little wiggle room just in case for some shocking reason Adams makes the team.
All right, let's go to wide receiver. And as far as the receivers are concerned, we're pretty similar here with the exception of one thing, and that is that you only believe they're going to have 6. So that'll be Davis, Moore, Crowder, Mims, Cole, and Berrios. I think it's going to be 7 because of the fact that I think it's either going to be that they're going to keep Vincent Smith as the receiver kick returner, or they're going to go with Cager because, and there was nothing that even changed my mind in the game against the Eagles. I mean, when Cager plays, Cager, I think, makes plays. And I think that he has got the ability to be a legitimate, top 4 or 5 receiver in the NFL. So I don't think they want to risk him going somewhere else. I don't know if they would be able to protect him or not. So I'm gonna maybe this is a roll of the dice that Cager makes it, because if he does, the problem is he doesn't really do anything else. That's the trick. And if you're right and there's only 6, then does Berrios become also a kick returner? I haven't seen Ty Johnson return kicks. Carter doesn't look good returning kicks. So who's the kick returner?
Yeah, I have Berrios projected. Like I said, I had Cage originally on the practice squad. The caveat I'll throw in there, because you've done it a couple times in what we went through before the show, I would say that if there are more guys that are added with injury designations than I expected, right? If 3 or 4 guys end up on injury designations, I do think that'll create an open role initially for somebody like Cager to be carried as a seventh wide receiver.
Do you favor Do you think they would favor Cager over someone that could also return kicks like Vincent Smith?
Yeah, I think Berrios is going to be their kick returner, and I think that
Okay.
Cager, from a talent perspective, as a pure wide receiver, we saw flashes last preseason before he got hurt, right? And we were both happy that they signed him as an undrafted free agent last year. This year, he had the touchdown on Friday night, which clearly didn't hurt his case. Look, we know what Vincent Smith can do. We know what Jeff Smith can do. I think you have a better likelihood of one of those guys maybe slipping through the practice squad,
yes,
potentially,
I agree.
than maybe a Cager where a team will take a flyer at him and put him stashed him towards the bottom of a lineup.
Exactly. Yes, I could see both Vincent and Jeff Smith on the practice squad. So, all right, now let's go to tight end. And again, I think the only difference here is, again, the Wesco designation, except for the fact that we both don't have Daniel Brown making it. You have only 3 actual tight ends because Wesco is going to be really a fullback. I'm going to have 4 with Yeboah. So Yeboah could definitely end up on the practice squad. He had a phenomenal preseason game the other night, and he's got a lot of talent. And I don't know if the Jets want to risk him outside the roster now. No way Daniel Brown beats out Yeboah. We both agree on that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Look, my view on this is Herndon has not looked good at all this preseason other than blocking. Herndon's probably been their best blocking. Kind of ironic given where he was brought on board to try to be a receiving tight end when they drafted him. Offensively, I think we're all shocked in terms of the degradation of his game offensively as a pass receiving tight end, given what we thought we were getting originally when they drafted him, and the hype that summer, given how he had looked in camp.
But the thing is, in the preseason, we haven't seen him do anything.
Nope.
He's not dropping passes. He's not getting involved.
The ball thrown to him.
Yeah.
Right. That which is I'm not sure which is worse. Is it worse if he be dropping catches, or
know.
worse than he's not getting involved at all?
Yeah, who knows?
Look, like I said, I think with Yeboah, it all depends on their designation in terms of what they do with injuries, right? There are at least 4 or 5 guys that we know of that are likely starting the year on either the IL or the PUP list, depending on how long they're going to be out. I do think that will drive guys like Yeboah and others, Cager, making the roster or not making the roster, depending on how they configure and how many guys are out to start the season. And we know that obviously Lawson was replaced by Lawson, so that's a net right there. But we'll get into later guys like Ashton Davis, and there's a couple others that we know are going to start the year. Zuniga's probably going to start the year on the injured list. That might create spots for other guys, and it depends on if they move these guys and they replace them with guys at those positions, or they try to create room elsewhere and then have to make some decisions when those guys come back.
Offensive line, and it's so far we're hearing good news about Vera Tucker. I mean, who knows? It could be week 1, first play, and Vera Tucker's out there with the ones. I'm actually believing that's going to happen.
I think the extra week actually helps here, right? So normally we'd go from last preseason game right to the first game of the season. This year's elaboration, right? Because you have about 2 weeks in between, even after cut days, which is why, as you said, take what we're saying right now, and probably by the time cut days happen, throw it out, because in the next week and a half before the games start, there'll probably be a substantive number of moves. But that gives Vera Tucker now an extra week to get ready, which he would not have had normally in the past.
Yeah. So in that case, the 5, who do you think is going to win the right tackle job?
I think it's Moses.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Experience.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you there. Experience
is one thing. How he played the last couple of years in Washington is another thing. And I just think he's just a better offensive line than Fant is. Not that Fant's not had a good preseason, but I do think Moses is a better fit for this offense in terms of what they want to do.
I'm going to agree with you, but it's going to be, 55%, 45%. It's not going to surprise me if Fant wins the job. But it's just Fant is just a much better. I can play just about anywhere but center kind of guy. And I think it's better to have the guy that can just worry about that. Moses right tackle, that's it kind of deal. So
Yep.
yeah, and by the way, Moses with the penalty in the preseason game, so get used to the penalties with Morgan.
Yeah,
Moses.
but it's funny. I have a colleague who's a big Redskin fan, and he was not happy that the Redskins let him go.
He had a very good season last year. All right. So the rest of the offensive line with the starting five, who we all felt in the beginning of the season it would be Becton, Vera Tucker, McGovern, Van Routen, and Moses. Fant obviously the number one. We both have Feeney making 7. Now you're only going to go with 8 at this point, adding Murray. I can see that, but I'm instead a lot's going to be determined here on is McDermott healthy. That's definitely important. I'm just gonna guess and say that he is. So I'm gonna say McDermott over Murray, and then I haven't heard anything, and it's I'm listening to all these press conferences. Nobody has asked about Adoga. I would like to know what the hell's going on with this guy. Can you ask one question about Adoga, please, so I can get an answer? So I don't know. I mean, unless they trade the guy, which again is very possible, I'm just going to put Adoga on the list. But you're going to say that you're going to slide him out and then somebody will just pick him up?
I don't know if he's healthy, if he's not healthy, if he's starting the year on the injury list. We haven't heard word one,
yeah.
right? So, and look, Feeney's had a crappy preseason, in my opinion. Murray hasn't had a great preseason, right?
No, it's been bad.
You could see Murray and Adoga over Feeney and Murray. But as you said, they're probably going to want to go with 8 or 9, so I'd probably add one more to the list. I'm not quite sure. Pick the least of the worst, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And this is one of those where they're going to be scouring the waiver wire, right? I could see them making whoever makes the lineup and roster initially could very well change over the next 10 days before the season starts.
And especially good where the Jets are in the positioning of the waiver wire, if there is somebody that's available. And look, there are still, some decent linemen out there in free agency. So, you just, we'll see. But I agree. Yep. I think there's at least one lineman that is somewhere else that'll be added to the team. And we'll see how that goes. Okay, next up. And by the way, we haven't left anybody else off of the offensive line because of the fact you can forget about. I mean, I haven't heard anything at all about this David Moore guy. No way 11 makes the team. And Grant Hermans was a really nice rookie free agent, but he's going to end up more than likely on the practice squad unless there's something they know that we don't. Okay, defensive line. Okay, so there's Williams and Rankins and Huff and Fadokasi and Franklin Myers and Shepard and Blair. And we also both agree on Rashed Hamiklar. So we're pretty good there. Now, the thing is about injuries. So Phillips probably starts on injured list.
Yep.
Zuniga, I think we both agree, would probably start off on the injured list. And the only other player then, besides, of course, Lawson added to that list, would be Marshall. And what do they do with Marshall? So I think it's very possible that Marshall still makes the team as long as, again, Zuniga winds up on the injured list.
So how many you have him carrying? 10?
Correct.
Okay. Remember, 10 there, we got to figure out who's not making it somewhere else, right?
Sure.
You've already added Cager as a seventh wide receiver, right? So that's starting to change landscapes a little bit. You've added an extra offensive lineman also.
I don't have as many defensive backs.
Okay.
That's where I'm making a move there.
Okay.
So
I will say, look, I think Zuniga is going to end up on the injured list. I think Phillips is as well. Obviously, Lawson replaces Lawson. So, that was one of those that would have made the list originally. I think it all depends on how they configure the rest of the roster, which with a couple of other injuries on the back end, I think there's going to be some migration and movement there as well.
Okay, now at linebacker, we completely agree on the 5: Mosley, Cashman, Nasruddin, Sherwood, and Dawkins. There's really nobody else to talk about. So the only question is how long Jarrad Davis is out.
I think it's the first 6 weeks, of the season.
Well,
he'll be back.
I thought I heard them say I thought I heard them say he'd be out 6 weeks.
No, he'll be back after the bye week, is what I heard.
Okay, when's the bye week then?
I think it's week 6, so I think
It's
he's
right
back
after
right
the
after
Atlanta
that.
game.
I think so. Yep.
After the Europe game.
Yep. Okay. So he's right back. I think he's back after that.
All right, that makes sense. All right, now the secondary. Okay, so this is where we have a little bit of a disagreement, and again, this is just a numbers game. So you have, how many guys do you have? Do you have 12?
12, yeah.
Well, let's see. There's Austin, Hall, Carter, Eccles, Hardy, Dunn, Guidry, and Pinnock. That's what you have in a corner.
Yeah.
Now, I agree with all of them except Pinnock. And then safety, you
remember this was written before Lawson was brought in, right? So I know one player is going to have to be moved. So Pinnock practice squad is one of those guys who's probably bubble, I would say.
Okay, yeah, because I have Pinnock myself on the practice squad already, which is why, like I said, that's one of the reasons. And I also have Hassel on the practice squad, so that's why I have a little bit of room. I only have 10 DBs.
I think I think they're going to go with 4 safeties, though. I think they don't want to leave themselves short with only having 1 extra safety.
Well, I mean, it's very possible. I mean, Hassel's played a lot. There's no question. I actually think Hassel, if there's 11 guys, I actually think Hassel might make it over Pinnock. I could see Pinnock being a practice squad guy, and that's it. I don't think anybody would pick him up.
No, and we also have another injury because Davis is out to start the season.
And Davis is out, and we have no idea when he's going to play. So
haven't heard another one is where you haven't heard word one in terms of really any true updates in terms of his status.
The good news is, so far from what we've heard about the secondary is, and a few things that I've seen as well, I think we both like the way Eccles is played. Carter looked really good on Friday night. Guidry and Carter are both being praised heavily by Salah. Remember, we were wondering about Poole. What are they going to do at slot, at nickel? Well, there you go. Now they don't have just one guy; they have 2 guys they like.
I still like to have Poole back there. Let's put it that way.
He's not coming back. So
that I know. It doesn't mean I still don't want to have. Didn't wish we had him there.
Well, hey, if these guys are as good as they think,
but there's got to be a happy medium. I mean, again, you need to develop the kids, but you need to also have other guys there that could potentially step in.
I don't think he's not talking about it like he's developing the kids. He's talking up like these guys are good. So that's how he's talking about them.
Part of that may be just a confidence thing to inspire confidence in them.
Let's, I don't know. If they don't play well, then we'll come back and go, okay, so this is what we're learning. That he's talking out of his ass every once in a while with these young players. I don't think that's the case with these guys because I actually think, again, like I said, from what I've seen, I like. So I think they've got something there. So, and he's going to want to get them on the field as much as possible too. So, and that's important because I tell you what, Austin has seemed to do, I mean, he hasn't played a lot, but when he's played well because I haven't really called his name. Hall's the one that hasn't really played very well this preseason in my mind. Dunn, by the way, who they signed big in free agency after the draft, he's been picked on a lot. And I think the only reason he makes the team is because they did value him so much. And I think they are looking at this as, like you were just saying, that's a guy that they want to build up and coach up, and they don't want to lose a guy like that, no matter how, questionable he's looked in the preseason.
And the good news is that Eccles, who got hurt Friday night, practiced today, so that was a positive as well.
Oh, he was back today. Okay,
he was back today.
All right, and then of course Neeson has also played very well, from what we've heard and seen so far. So, and that was unexpected. All right, and then Amendola making the team as our place kicker. So
as of this moment,
as of week 1. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed. That first field goal, 45-yard field goal. We're all going to be like, "Come on, man, make this."
Yep.
Or it's going to be a long season at kicker for the Jets. So we got to. And again, man, just has had as good as a preseason as we would have hoped.
Yep, and Hennessy is just always there.
Very steady. Yep. Good. That's something you never want to hear about is your long snapper, and we never hear his name called. So that's a good thing.
That's true.
All right. So we'll see about how this roster unfolds. We'll see if there's definitely going to be some more interesting pickups, maybe a little trade here or there. I'm not sure there'll be any big trades. I doubt it. But when we come back on again in about a week, 10 days, something like that. We'll recap the 53 man as well as preview that first game against Sam Darnold in Carolina.
True. Looking forward to it.
Did you see the first game? I mean, the Darnold game?
No, I will. I'm looking forward to seeing it, though. It should be interesting.
Yeah.
The hype will be very interesting.
No, the preseason game.
Yeah, I know. Not good.
No, not good at all. All right, anyway. So that's when you want to catch a guy like that anyway. When he's on a new team, it's going to take him a while to get, and that's when we want to catch him. All right, Jan, appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you before the season begins.
Sounds good.